Keep spinning. Okay, it's logging in. Hello, everyone. This is a special present chat room at awakenedradio.net. We are proud to present information for you on GMOs, Monsanto. What is it and why do we need to stop it? We've got Rob Ragazine with us here tonight, and he is our host for a special broadcast presentation. Thank you, Rob, for being here tonight.
Thank you. Tonight we'll be talking with Debra Cohen. She's involved in many Connecticut awareness groups, including GMO Free Connecticut and the Occupy movement. And today Connecticut had some good news. I guess we had a food labeling bill passed. So I'll have Debra talk a little bit about that.
Thank you very much for the chance to share this. It is indeed a big piece of news. The labeling bill went through, but there are some caveats. And I don't want anybody to think that tomorrow they'll go to the store and find everything labeled on the shelves. Before anything will be actually put into effect here in Connecticut, the bill calls for at least 4 other states, one of which has to be contiguous to our state, with an aggregate population of at least 20 million people to sign on to the same program. So what that means is we really still have a lot of work ahead of us in other states. We've passed it here in Connecticut, but so far we're standing out there by ourselves, and all of the work that we did here within our borders really needs to be expanded now, and we all have to get on the phones and do all the work in other states as well.
So what would you like people to most know about GMOs?
Oh, my gosh, that is such a big question. And I have to be honest with you, over the last year or so, that issue has grown to be my main focus. There is so much to know. To put it in the short story, GMOs, which stands for genetically modified organisms, are the product of chemical companies, most predominantly Monsanto, who brought us Agent Orange and DDT. And what Monsanto, in its wisdom, has done is to take the DNA from bacteria and viruses, many of which are found in the soil, taken them out of their natural occurring places and injected them into the seeds of the vegetables that we eat and the things that are fed to the animals, which some of us eat. There are no long-term studies that prove that these are safe. They basically change the DNA makeup of the plants, of the animals that are eating those plants, and many studies are pointing us in the direction of finding out that they may even be changing the DNA within our own bodies after we eat them. So that's a very, very short story. When we are finished with this broadcast, I would be more than happy to share my email address. And if anyone would like to email me, I will send a list of lots of resources that they can go to find out the really broad picture, because there's so much stuff out there.
Okay, we have a forum where we can post that, and we can do that.
Okay.
And I've been reading the news lately and seeing that various countries, such as South Korea, Japan, China, are all blocking our wheat transports into their countries.
That's right. Wheat was at one time not expected to be infected with GMOs. Now, I use the word infected. Monsanto would say treated. It's a matter of perspective, but recently there is evidence that wheat coming out of Oregon, I believe it is, has actually been cross-pollinated and now contains GMOs, and other countries that don't want GMOs on their shelves are telling us to boycott our for those of us who really want to see Monsanto stopped in its tracks, this is great news. But we also have to keep in mind that this is going to have an effect on the economy of the farmers who are growing this. Our ultimate goal is to get farmers across the country, not only small farmers but large farmers, to say no to GMO seed crops and avoid this problem. But for now, that's where the situation is.
How do you feel about what's happening here in Connecticut, since you seem to be so involved in a lot of groups? Do you see it growing?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm doing the happy dance over the passage of the bill, and a lot of really, really hard work went into getting this passed. Hard work on the part of so many people, and what I've seen over the last year or so is the number of people who are passionate about this really grow and swell. I'd like to give you an example of something that happened, I think it was even just last week. I've lost track of time. We invited people to a march against Monsanto in Hartford, and we really had no idea how many people to expect. It was a cold day, it was a rainy day, it was miserable, and we figured, well, we might get... That's wonderful. And we thought, well, we could get 20 or 25 people, and that would be great because we'd be making a small statement from Hartford. Estimates are somewhere around 250 people, having been out in that miserable weather with us.
And everyone was cheering us on.
And didn't it feel great? Didn't you feel empowered?
Great. Felt empowered, definitely.
That's right. And the other thing that I found over the last year or so is that while not that many more people seem to be aware of what GMOs are, but more people are willing to stop and listen when we offer information or when we ask them, are you aware of GMOs? May I tell you a little bit about them? So the general public seems to be growing more receptive to information, particularly when we introduce the subject as something that really could have an impact on their health and their children's health and that sort of thing. So I'm feeling really energized about this movement taking off.
So I was just asked a question about perhaps being sued for the food bill that went through today. So do you think it'll be repealed or...
Well, I didn't understand the beginning of your question. Can you repeat that?
I was just saying that perhaps someone will come in like Monsanto and sue the state to repeal the bill.
Well, my understanding is that just a while ago, maybe last year, Vermont was on the verge of doing the same sort of thing that Connecticut just did. And they were informed that Monsanto was going to swoop in and sue the state. And they backed off. And last year, Connecticut was really close to doing this, and I believe we heard the same thing, and we backed off. I guess it's really easy for me to say this because, I'm not the person that's going to be taken to court, but someone has to make a stand. Someone has to be first. Some state needs to be willing to stand up and say, Monsanto, bring it on. And while that might not be a technical answer. It's not just them, though,
is it?
How do you mean?
It's other companies, too.
There are other chemical companies included. You're right. There's Dow. There are a couple of others whose names escape me. I think that's a chance that we need to take. If we all lived in perpetual fear of these companies coming in to sue us, they will have won without any sort of a fight at all.
Right. So you have these companies like DuPont and Bayer and I guess untold others that...
Thank you. Those are the ones I couldn't think of.
Right. That really just want to, market products and sell them and don't worry about what the results are.
Right. Monsanto is the company that I am most familiar with, and that's the company which is really my main target. Although the things that I have to share about Monsanto are probably pretty standard across the board. The seeds that Monsanto sells to farmers in this country depend on Roundup to grow properly, that chemical pesticide. Well, who makes Roundup? It's Monsanto. So they have this nice little package all tied up. Farmers are not allowed to save their seeds from year to year, so every year they have to go back to Monsanto, buy more seeds, buy more pesticide, and then just repeat it year after year. I don't think these are the people that we want to be intimidated by and just to roll over for.
No.
They're dangerous.
I was watching, I don't know if it was Forks Over Knives or one of those food documentaries, and they were talking about the seed people and the harvesters and the folks who, clean the seeds, I guess, and they're going out of business one by one because they get sued. And there's no, they can't make money doing it because now the farmers are using the genetically modified seeds, and they're not allowed to do any seed cleaning.
Well, to make matters worse, what happens to a lot of farmers is that their fields are downwind from GMO fields. And when the GMO field pollens get carried windward across non-GMO fields, the non-GMO fields are then contaminated. Monsanto then comes in and says, oh, these are GMO fields. We own the rights. We own the patent rights to those seeds now. We now own your crop. We now own your property. We now own you. And unfortunately, this has in many cases been held up in court. If
right.
That's not a nightmare, I don't know what is.
That's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So how can people get more involved once they start to realize the depth of this?
Oh, there are so many wonderful ways. The first thing I would encourage people to do is just research into this issue or any other issue that they might feel passionate about. Do the research. There are lots of groups here in Connecticut that are active on the Monsanto and GMO front. There is GMO Free Connecticut. That's one of the groups that I've been working with and very active in getting the bill passed. On Facebook, there is also GMO Free USA, started by Diana Reeves, who lives right here in Connecticut, and she's done a marvelous, marvelous job of getting word out across the country. These are all organizations that people can join and look to for information. But the biggest thing, my passion for working on this issue is in the form of boycott. And I think that we all have the power to make very political statements with our dollars, either by spending them or not spending them. Among the information that I mentioned before that I'd be happy to share with any of your listeners are some ideas for how to contact all of the companies of all of the foods that you eat that are in your kitchen. How to contact them, ask them if there is any chance of GMOs being in that food, and if they say yes, not only ceasing to buy them, but contacting the company very specifically and saying, I'm no longer going to be your customer, my name is such and such, this is the reason, and I'm going to tell everybody that I know not to buy your product because it's dangerous.
I'm sure if you share that with us, we'll be able to post it somewhere on the website.
Okay, I'd be more than happy to. I just need to say one other thing, because in my last comment I said because they are dangerous. There are a lot of people out there who don't believe or who are not yet convinced that GMOs might pose a danger to our health, to the earth's health, to animal health. And from my point of view, it's okay if they don't buy that science. But ultimately, I think we all have the right to know what's in our food so that we can decide for ourselves, which is why I'm so thrilled about the bill that's just come by. There are other people who are not convinced about the science but really object to Monsanto's business model and find that reason enough to say, nope, you're not getting my money. So I offer that perspective as well.
So what was the initial flame that got you involved? What was the trigger?
The last person who asked me that got this answer, and I swear it's true. I don't remember. I don't remember my life before this issue. I don't remember where I was when I heard it for the first time. But I do remember being advised to check out a film. Is it the story of Monsanto? Hold on, I've got it written down here because I want to get it right. The World According to Monsanto. And on YouTube, you can find the full version of that for no charge. And I sat down and I watched that film, and I was absolutely horrified and hooked. So that's the honest answer. I don't remember what got me hooked, but here I am.
So that's your passion.
It's like parents not being able to really remember their lives before their kids were born.
Right.
If that's a reasonable analogy.
So most people just think that this is just normal farming. It's the way farming is done now. We have to use chemicals. What would you say to them?
I would say that the organic farmers that are growing the organic food that a lot of us are choosing to eat are not having a problem. Monsanto claims that without the use of pesticides, the crops will fail, that crops are prone to drought, that they're prone to disease, that they're prone to being taken over by weeds. What some of the studies are showing us is that after several years, after 2 or 3 or 4 years of using Roundup on GMO-ready crops, the weeds become more resistant to the Roundup. The bugs become more resistant to the Roundup. They are not more drought resistant. And the output, the yield from these fields is not any more spectacular than if they were conventional seed. So, we dispute the claims. Monsanto says they want to feed the world. Number one, we don't believe that they're going to be able to feed the world any more successfully. And number two, we really question, well, what is it exactly that you're willing to feed them? So.
And then what happens once they're eating this food?
There are studies that show the presence of pesticide DNA in pregnant women, in babies. While it has not yet been absolutely proved yet, there are suggestions that GMOs in our food are really linking us to rising rates of autism, allergies, autoimmune disease. I've been working with young children for about 35 years. I've been in early childhood education. And in the last, I want to say, 10 years or so, maybe not even that long, I've been astounded by the rise in the number of children we have coming into our care with all kinds of health problems that we simply didn't see on any more than a very occasional basis. In all the other years, in all of my past history working with kids, I'm not going to tell you that's definitive proof because it certainly isn't, but the suggestion certainly is there that we need to do a lot more studying of the possible effects before we say, sure, it's safe, let's feed it to our babies.
Right. And that really could be a problem. It's the commercials that I'm seeing on TV are trying to make it all look so normal. You see these people spraying their homes with, big, huge jars of chemicals, and they're smiling, and it just seems so crazy.
Well, if you go and check out the commercials for something as basic as baby formula, you'll find that the 4 main companies producing baby formula in this country are all heavily injected with GMOs. And this is what's being fed to our most vulnerable population. And parents don't know. They have no idea the possible harm that they're doing to their children, which is really the saddest thing. If you talk to mothers who have become aware of all of these possibilities, you can see the look of anguish on their face when they say, I didn't know. I'm responsible for my child's health and I didn't know. And that's because so far most of them are not labeled. It's a crime.
So do we think that they'll be labeled and that'll make a change here in Connecticut?
Well, again, Connecticut can't demand that anything be labeled until all of those other factors fall into place. The 4 other states actually enacting them as well. I believe this is a number of years down the road, but if people are educated to know what to look for, what we can do in the interim is be very, very careful and read the label of anything that we're contemplating buying before we actually put it in that cart and pay for it. Again, going online and the information that I can offer to your listeners will give you an exhaustive list of what to look for. It makes shopping a real pain. It might double your shopping time to sit there and read every label carefully, but once you know what to look for, you know what not to buy.
What happens? Well, that brought up
no,
the question.
Go ahead.
For me, what happens when you go shopping?
When I go shopping, it's gotten to the point now where I'm very familiar with certain brands of things that I fully trust. I know. I'm familiar with the labels. If I'm about to buy something that I've not bought in a long while or that I'm not familiar with, I stand there with my reading glasses and I go through every single ingredient on the list. There is also something now available for download on iPhones. It's a GMO-free shopping guide. It's a wonderful tool. It will point you in the direction of brands that are GMO-free, as well as tell you what to look for when you're reading the labels. Of course, the other thing that you can do is just buy organic, but we recognize that for many people, organic food is out of reach financially, which is another reason why this is just such a crime. So,
what's the name of that iPhone app?
Hold on. It is the GMO Shopper's Guide. I should know this because it's on my phone. If you can let me get this to you a little bit later on, I promise I will share it.
Okay. That sounds important. Now, I've read somewhere where the labels, the little stickies on the fruits and such, and the produce are supposed to identify its origin.
Yeah. My understanding is that those little stickers are of very little value. And just keep in mind that those little stickers can be removed from one piece of fruit and restuck to another piece of fruit, and no one's the wiser. But I don't believe, since nothing that is a GMO product is currently being labeled, I don't believe that any GMO growers are actually sticking stickers on their fruit to let us know that. It's certainly not in their best interest,
So we couldn't tell.
To do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There would be no way to tell where it came from and thus determine if it's GMO or not.
Right. Right.
So what is happening in New York and Massachusetts and Rhode Island?
Well, just before I dialed you up to spend this time with you, I went online and I wanted to get some information from New York. I did so in a hurry. I think I read that the labeling bill that was being considered in New York did not go through today. I need to read it more carefully to be absolutely sure about that. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, these things don't go through the first time. But there are people in so many states around us. There were people in New Jersey who were calling in and supporting us, people from New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, who were calling in their wishes to our legislature. And I think that we really need to return that favor. I think we need to find out where bills start or stand in other states and make those calls in return and write letters and do the emails and just put ourselves out there. We owe it to all of the people who helped get it through here. So I guess in answer to your question, I'm not sure about New York yet.
Okay. We have a few minutes till break. You could spend some time sharing your links so that people can find your information online.
Okay. For GMO information, on Facebook, there's GMO Free USA. There's GMO Free Connecticut. Also GMO Free Hartford. There is Right to Know Connecticut. And there is Occupy Monsanto. All of those links will hook you up with many others. because what you'll do is, you'll start to read the threads and the posts, and they will be from people from all around the country that will lead you to other links. I also have a list of 4 organizations that are worth contacting. Are you ready for those?
Okay.
Okay. The first one is the Institute for Responsible Technology. The other one is, the local one is NOFA. It's an association of organic farmers. And there is one in many, many areas throughout New England. There's the Union of Concerned Scientists. And there's also something called non-GMOproject.org. And I believe those are the people who offer the free iPhone app for the Shopper's Guide.
Okay.
If you have one more minute, I can also give you a list of several films that I think are really important for people to see.
Yes, we do.
Okay. The first one, as I mentioned before, is The World According to Monsanto, the full version, which is available on YouTube. Another one is Food Inc., I-N-C. It's available on Amazon. It's a slight cost, and you get to rent it for so many days. I don't remember how that works exactly. But if that doesn't turn you off to certain food sources in this country, nothing will. And then 2 more films that I've been active in showing in several locations. One is Genetic Roulette, and the other one is Seeds of Death. Not a very pleasant title, but
right.
Again, worth seeing. And I saw one yesterday, which is not available for general release yet, but it's called GMO OMG. And Jeremy Seifert, who made the movie, and it really revolves around his family's experience, is traveling around the country, and he's introducing the film. And the hope is to get it into mainstream movie houses and get it out to the general public. But it's an excellent film. If you can see that, absolutely go for it.
Okay. And there's also, I'm told, Documentary Heaven, I think, .com, and that will list a bunch of the films as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I just learned something from you. Thanks.
Yeah. So we can break right now and hang on till we get back.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody, you are listening to a special broadcast of the Awakened Radio Network. Our website is awakenedradio.net. If you have questions or comments for Rob or his guest tonight, add Awakened Radio to Skype or dial 334-649-7204. Check us out at awakenedradio.net. Back to you, Rob.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about what could happen, but we really haven't talked in depth about any of the environmental concerns. I've seen pictures of China, for instance, with some of the chemical waste.
Right. I mean, the toll that it's taking on soil, on water with runoff, is really awful. And of course, the toll that it's taking on the fields that are using Roundup and other pesticides year after year after year are pretty sad to look at. There are so many concerns with our environment. I mean, where do you start? When I was a kid, nobody was talking about air pollution and water pollution and fracking and all of the really horrible things that we're doing. So, this is one more in a long line of things that I think we really need to be concerned about. But I think everybody needs to pick and choose what they're going to get most active about and really concentrate their efforts there.
Just to be aware of what's happening. To
right.
be aware of the runoff with the massive factory farms and the animals and the waste that's produced.
Well, if you watch that movie Food Inc., you'll get a lot of information about just that sort of thing. and really about the very, very inhumane and really cruel conditions under which so many of the animal food farms in this country are operating under. It's pretty horrifying. You know, it might go so far as to change people's eating habits.
Now, do you have a garden? Do you raise your own food?
I do not. I have a garden, but it's a perennial plant garden for shade plants. I'm not blessed with any sun, which I'm really disappointed about because I would love to. But I live in Wethersfield, and here in town there are at least 2 local farms. And over the summer and into the fall, we're really lucky to have a farmer's market once a week. And we're really careful to patronize those businesses. I look for organic when I can afford it. And then I also just look for non-GMO labels or things that I can trust by reading the ingredients. But no, I'm not a farmer, which is all the more reason why I feel like I really need to support the people who are. We owe them our very lives. No farmers, no food, no us.
No us. Now you're listening to Debra Cohen here on Awakened Radio. This is Rob Ragazine. I'm normally on Thursday nights at 8, but this is a special broadcast because I was involved with a march, World Food March Day with Debra and a whole bunch of other people on a really cold, rainy, wet May Saturday afternoon. So if you've just joined us, please know that this is a special broadcast trying to bring awareness to GMO foods and help you to be more aware of your choices and how they can impact our world.
Since you did mention last Saturday's march again, I would like to very publicly say and thank 2 women with whom I worked to get that march going. They are Rebecca Burton, whom I know from Occupy Hartford, and Shannon Watson. Rebecca and I have been friends and working together through Occupy for, oh my gosh, a year and a half, going on 2 years. The amazing thing is that I met Shannon a week before the march actually took place. So it was a pretty amazing piece of work, given that we had gotten together so quickly before the march actually happened. And I think a great illustration of what people can do, what, you know, everybody has it in them to accomplish. But thank you for mentioning the march again.
Yes. So do you have any recommendations for books or other sources of information? You've mentioned some online things, but some people can't get online. Maybe they can start with a book.
I'm not the best person to ask about book resources because I never seem to find the time to read. But a simple call to the library or a trip to the library, I'm sure, is going to, you know, open up vast resources of possibilities. And again, if I can find out more information and then get that to you and you want to get it out to your listeners, I would be glad to do that. This, you know, it's not a one-time project. It's an ever-growing effort to get information out there.
So what's coming up in and around Connecticut for rallies that people should be aware of? I know there's one coming up in July 6th, I believe, and then October.
Right. The one in July will be on July 6th. Now, bear with me, because remember I said that putting the march last week together took about a week. We did it in a week. We are planning way ahead now, but our details are still in the planning stage. So, actually not having been in touch with either Rebecca or Shannon over the last, maybe 24 hours, I'm not even certain where our event page stands. That is also a work in progress, but I will share my email address, and if anybody would like specific information, I will send the event page information as soon as it's available. We are hoping for a march and an opportunity to share information and leaflets and conversation with a lot of people who are coming over to Hartford for the weekend July 4th celebration. But it will be on Saturday, July 6th.
Okay.
Okay. We're really looking forward to that one. And all of the 250 people who came to Hartford last week, come on out again, because we really need to keep our voices up.
So October is sort of in the air.
Well, what we need to do is get through July, and then go on to planning October. I believe there will be something going on October 12th, but plans for that will be made in the near future.
Okay. Do you know of any events happening in any of our local states or in the region?
I don't, but if you contact, or if you, and I apologize for only coming up with online things, because you really did make a good point about not everybody having computer access, but it's my main connection these days. If you go to GMO free and then any state, there's a GMO free, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Vermont, you get the picture. They will all have listings of what's going on in their state legislatively, what's going on in their state with events. And I think that's really the best source. I've been so involved right here in Connecticut up until the last day or so that I'm not familiar yet with all of the things going on in the states around us.
Okay. I guess the big question is, can we really find any information that says the GM food crops can bring up any kind of benefit, or they're just there?
Are you asking about evidence that says they are good for us?
Not good for us, no, but not bad for us.
Well, the bioindustry, puts out statement after statement saying there is nothing harmful about our products, but they won't release any of their own studies. And they also say, and this is the catch that really gets me, this makes me angrier than anything. What the biotech industry says, particularly Monsanto, is that these foods are safe because the FDA has come out and stated that they are safe. The FDA, in effect, relies on Monsanto to tell them that they're safe. And there's a revolving door going on between Monsanto and the FDA and the USDA and the Supreme Court, so that there are people in all of these places that are in some way, past or present, connected to Monsanto. Personally, I've not been given any reason to believe what the biotech industry is telling me. There's no hard evidence. There are no long longitudinal studies that have been done. They generally cut their studies off at 3 months. The long-term studies that have been done in Europe that went on for 4 or 5 or 6 months or longer, some of those studies were coming up with evidence about cancer in the lab rats. None of those things showed up in less than 90 days. So the thinking is, the industry is very conveniently shutting their research off just in time, or they have more information and evidence that they're choosing not to share with us. Take your pick.
And notice that they have people spread throughout the high levels of government.
Right. Michael Taylor is the head of the FDA. He is a former Monsanto employee. Tom Vilsack, I believe he's with USDA. I'll have to check. I believe that's the one he's with, former former Monsanto employee. And Clarence Thomas on our own Supreme Court, on the Supreme Court that is hearing cases that have to do with farmers either being sued by Monsanto or suing Monsanto, and the farmers coming up short. It seems to me that Mr. Thomas shouldn't be part of these hearings, but nobody's taken my advice, so there you have it.
Well, it seems like a conflict of interest at the very least.
To say the least, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know what these people are thinking, or if they're thinking. So, yeah, there is a revolving door.
So do you know if there's anyone thinking about a class action suit against any of these companies for health reasons that are producing these chemicals in the foods and whatnot?
I don't know if there are any class action suits on the basis of health. I do know, but I don't have the specific details, that there have been class action suits brought on the behalf of farmers who were claiming that, you know, they're losing their land, they're losing their crops, either because of cross-pollination or Monsanto coming in and saying, okay, guys, we own you now. But I haven't heard of any giant victories. And when I do, I'll scream it from the rooftop.
Okay. Here's a good question. Do you feel successful in your endeavors to date?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I must admit, I wasn't feeling very hopeful that we were going to get as far as we did with the labeling bill here in Connecticut this year. I really felt that they were going to come back with some compromise bill that was absolutely unacceptable, and it was just going to die, and we were going to have to start all over again. And I was willing to do that. I was gearing up for it, energizing for it. But to realize how far we've come here in Connecticut to at least have the very beginning of a labeling bill, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. I feel like we've done so much work that, and not only in terms of work with the legislature and getting this passed, but in terms of community education, community outreach, and just getting the information out there to the general public. You know, we show movies wherever we can get an audience. We hand out leaflets wherever we go. I carry a whole stack of things in my car, and I just go up to people and say, "Can I please give you something?" And most of the time, I don't know what they do with it after they leave me, but most of the time they take it and at least give it a short look. And if I only reach 2 or 3 people out of every 10 or 12 that I give that information to, that's, you know, 2 or 3 people that wouldn't have been reached if we weren't doing things like that. So yes, I do think that we have been successful in terms of a successful beginning. There's still a lot more to do.
What do you think the next step is after this? Well, the labeling bill isn't going to go into effect right away, but what's the next step?
In terms of labeling, I think the next steps, plural, is to get behind the efforts in all of the other states that we need to finally help get our bill enacted. And not only selfishly because we want our bill enacted, but because, you know, we really want to see this go through for the sake of health and for the sake of Monsanto losing its grip on our food supply. And ultimately, my personal goal, and I know that it's shared by many, many people, is just to say, Monsanto, it's been nice. Sorry to see you leave. But we'd really like to see a ban of all GMO food products. That may or may not happen in my lifetime, but hey, we have to dream. We have to think big.
How do you think we can move in that direction for a total ban?
By working with the other states to get labeling bills, because the labeling bills that will finally be enacted will make it easier for the general public to know what's in the products on the store shelves. You know, some of us have the knowledge and we have the patience to sit there and read every single ingredient on every single package. Not everybody does. Not every consumer is at the same level of knowledge of what to look for. The labeling bill will get people closer to that. And then the next step further, besides the labeling bill, the boycott that I was mentioning earlier. When we stop buying something, there's no longer a reason to produce it. And I realize that's, something that will have to happen on a fairly grand scale, but I think it's possible. Withhold your dollars, and the analogy that I...
What do you say to the person that looks at the Happy Meal at McDonald's and says, well, this is cheap, I can feed my kids quick?
Right, you're getting what you pay for. Oh my gosh, that really is a hard one, isn't it? Because I do understand that there are people who need to buy food at those prices. But just imagine if we were able to make the changes that we wanted to in the way our food was produced, so that companies like McDonald's were serving decent food. So that if enough farmers across the country that supply the grain for the animals that we end up eating, imagine if all of those farmers were now growing GMO-free grain seed, so that if you do go to McDonald's and you have to buy that cheap burger, you're still getting non-GMO meat. But just in general, going to someplace and, like McDonald's or any other fast food, if you really look into what's on that ingredient list, there are few things that sound familiar. But that's a whole other story.
So what do you think the motives are, besides just raising food, behind the whole GMO conglomerate?
Well, it's a round circle. I am Monsanto. You buy your seeds from me, and in order to grow the seeds successfully, you have to buy pesticides, and you have to buy the pesticides from me. And next year, you can't save this year's seeds. I won't let you do that, and you have to sign a contract. So next year, you have to come and buy your seeds from me again. And guess what? Next year, you're going to have to come and buy your pesticides from me again. I believe the bottom line is money. It's profit. It's profit over people, profit over the condition of our earth, of our planet. And the way I like to think about it is that our money is like Monsanto's oxygen supply, and we can suffocate them. We can cut off the supply. If we don't buy it, there they go. Again, over time, with many, many more people coming on board to do this. But if we can think it, it's possible. And I think about it a lot.
So how can we get more people to be aware of this?
We do it through community education. We do it knocking on our neighbors' doors. We do it showing movies. We do it writing editorials to the newspaper. We do it by sitting down to dinner with our friends, either in our homes or in a restaurant, and starting the conversation. I have some wonderful friends who have been very, very kind, who have listened to me go on and on and on about this for the better part of the last year. And not everybody will necessarily be so lucky, but we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep being visible in the choices that we do or do not make in the supermarket. If I can give you a short example. Last summer sometime, I had a recipe and I wanted sun-dried tomatoes. And I went to the market and I picked up the jar of sun-dried tomatoes and it had canola oil in it. I think it was canola oil. Canola oil and canola products in general are really very high on the list of things that we need to be careful about. And it was 7 o'clock at night, but the company was in California, so I called them from the market. And I got this woman on the phone and I asked her, can you guarantee me that there are no GMOs? She couldn't guarantee me. So I said to her, and I made a point of saying this where there were other people standing near me. I said, you can't guarantee me that there are no GMOs. I'm here in Connecticut. Please picture this. I'm putting your product back on the shelf. and I'm leaving the store without buying it. It's one example of the things that we can do, either privately or publicly. One of the things that I've learned over the last 2 years, pretty much I give a lot of credit to Occupy for this. I have learned that we really all have the power to open our mouths and be vocal and share our truth, and that it's not as difficult as it might seem before the first time we do it. So
stand up.
Stand up, right. Stand up. Open your mouth. Let your truth come out. You know, put your fist in the air and let people know that you're angry, that you're frustrated, that you think something is wrong. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 1,000 people will have 1,000 different things that they want to raise their voices about. Do it. Do it. We are in such desperate need of change across so many social issues in this country, and obviously in many others. I would just like to motivate people to get up and say, all right, I'm going to choose the thing that matters the most to me, and I'm going to start speaking out, and I'm going to try to be an influence. And you'll be successful sometimes, and other times people will look at you and say, oh, leave me alone, I don't want to hear about it. So you go to the next person, and you show the next movie, and you take part in the next panel discussion, or you agree to do the next radio interview. This isn't something that I ever would have thought about doing a year and a half ago. This is all brand new to me, but once you do it, you realize, hey, this makes sense, and we can all do it. We all have the power. Did that sound preachy?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Well, at least that's me.
Okay.
But that's what I'm doing anyway. You kind of have to do that.
Right.
Otherwise, no one knows what you're doing.
Right. Right. So, at work, when I go to work and I realize that a couple of people are suddenly paying attention to what's on the labels of the foods they're eating, to me, that's a victory, an absolute victory. And it's because I don't shut up about it.
That's your truth. You're living your truth.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And, it took a very long time for me to find this. I'm 61, and I don't remember a time in my life when I was grabbed so strongly by a social cause. I mean, I've certainly been grabbed by lots of other things in my life, but not a social cause for which I was willing to stand out there on a street corner and just
in the rain,
put myself up in the rain and the wind. Don't forget the wind.
So yes, I don't remember the last time that I don't think I ever did, really, to really take part in any march, anything, at least not in the time frame that I can remember.
Right.
And I really felt part of it.
And didn't you feel powerful? Didn't you feel
Yes.
like somebody was listening to you?
And I know people were listening to me because they were driving by honking.
That's right. That's right. It was a wonderful day. And we just need to keep repeating days like that as often as we can.
It would have been nice to see some broadcasters there.
Graceful?
Yes.
There was absolutely no coverage. And Shannon and Rebecca did a remarkable job of putting out press releases to so many media outlets. I couldn't possibly name them all, but they contacted the newspapers, they contacted television, they contacted a million people. And we got the response that we did, which was practically nothing.
And I didn't think about doing any radio until I got home and said, oh, I could have interviewed people.
The next time, lessons learned.
Yes. We only have about 4 minutes left. So is there any wise wisdom that you can leave us with?
Oh, my goodness, wise wisdom. I don't know. I think that's something that is also very individual to each of us who go out and do this. I'll tell you something from a personal point of view, and it may not apply to anybody else, but my parents were really very influential people in my life, and they have both since passed. And now, whenever I go to take an action or, write an article or open up my mouth and really take a stand on something, the ultimate question that I have to ask myself is, would this make my parents proud? And I have to tell you, everything that I have done surrounding this Monsanto and non-GMO issue leaves me with an absolute sense that, yes, it would make my parents proud. And I think, if we can all find that kind of question to ask ourselves, just to make sure we're feeling centered in what we're doing, that's how we find our cause, and that's how we find out where we're best off to act. So for me, it's my parents.
Is there any appearances that you'll be doing that you want like people to know about?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Are there any appearances that you'll be doing, or any shows, any upcoming events besides?
Currently, what we're working on is the July 6th. But there will, as soon as the event page is up, I will let you know. And if we're planning any other things, they will be there. But the GMO-free Connecticut and GMO-free USA will also have events in our state and in others. So I encourage people to check it out.
Okay. And any final words? We have about 2 minutes.
Final words. Monsanto, I cannot wait to say goodbye to you. I hope that everybody will pay really close attention to the ingredient lists on what they're eating. And also go deeper than that. If you're meat eaters and you're going to local farmers to buy the meat, it really is worth asking the question, is that grass-fed beef fed GMO seed over the winter? Because what we want to do is encourage farmers to go to non-GMO seed all the time. It will be a slow process, but well worth it. And if we're willing to put in the time, we will get there. We just have to keep asking questions and sharing information. I guess that's it. It's a two-way street.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Debra. This has been Debra Cohen, a special broadcast with me, Rob Ragazine, and we'll have to have you back on the air one day, probably in October.
Well, Rob, I really appreciate the invitation to do this. It was really a very special thing for you to do, so thanks. Just genuine thanks.
Whatever we can do to help.
All right.
All
right, join the team.
Yes.
Well, I want to, just as we're wrapping up, I want to let everyone know this will be turned into a YouTube video. And I am requesting, I'm Donna Devane, the station owner here, anyone out there that is putting together an event, a March Against Monsanto, an educational event, if you would like to be live on our airwaves, please email me, awakenedradio@gmail.com, or add Awakened Radio to your Skype and send me a message, and we'll see if we can set up some more live special broadcasts. That's what we're here for.
That would be great.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you, too. This was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Good night.